Welcome to the Stillness Broadcast. Tonight we gather in the space between waking and sleep where the boundaries of what we understand grow thin. Before we begin our journey together, I'd love to know, where are you listening from right now? What time is it where you are? Are you in bed, in your car, walking through the quiet hours? Drop it in the comments below. There's something deeply human about knowing we're scattered across continents and time zones, yet here we are, sharing this darkness together. If you find yourself returning to these stories, consider subscribing. We're here every week, waiting in the stillness. Let's begin. Story 1. Graham Vickers stood at the loading dock of the Valdosta Community Center, watching his breath condense in the November air. The Georgia cold came late but came hard, and tonight it pressed against his skin with the insistence of something that wanted acknowledgement. At 49, recently terminated from his quality assurance position at Brennan Pharmaceuticals, Graham had discovered that organizing charity drives was both meaningful work and a way to fill days that would otherwise stretch empty and accusing before him. He was meticulous by nature. His donation logs were color-coded by category. His receipts filed chronologically in folders labeled with printed tabs. Control was comfort when everything else felt uncertain. The divorce had been finalized 6 months ago. His daughter, Maya, no longer returned his calls. The charity work was all that remained of his identity as someone who helped. Someone who mattered. Someone who made order from chaos. The donation truck had arrived an hour late, which meant he was still here at 8:30 on a Tuesday night, instead of 7:30. The difference shouldn't have mattered. It was just an hour. But something about the later darkness felt different. Thicker somehow, more present. "Last load," the driver called, wheeling a dolly stacked with boxes toward the sorting room. Graham followed him inside, clipboard in hand. The community center smelled of industrial floor cleaner and the particular mustiness of donated clothing that had sat too long in someone's attic. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, their frequency just irregular enough to create a subliminal unease he'd learned to ignore. He began processing the boxes methodically. Clothing in bins 1 through 4, sorted by season and size. Kitchen items to Section B, electronics to quarantine for testing, books to the reading corner. This was the rhythm he understood. Input, categorization, proper placement, everything finding its designated location. The 11th box contained winter coats. He pulled them out one by one, checking pockets as policy required. People forgot things, receipts, tissues. Once, memorably, $300 in $20 bills that he dutifully logged and returned to the donor. His hand slid into the pocket of a men's wool overcoat, charcoal gray. Expensive. His fingers touched paper. The note was small, folded twice. Written in blue ink on lined paper torn from a spiral notebook. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, the letters pressed deep into the page. "Please help me. My name is David Corliss. I am trapped in the facility on Riverside Drive. They won't let me leave. If you find this, call the police. November 8th, please." Graham read it twice. Then a third time, November 8th. That was today. His first thought was prank. Teenagers had a peculiar sense of humor, and donation centers attracted their fair share of mischief. But something about the handwriting stopped him. The pressure of the pen, the specificity of the address, the date. He pulled out his phone and searched for facilities on Riverside Drive. 3 results appeared. A physical therapy center, a dental office, Magnolia Hills Extended Care. His thumb hovered over the nursing home's listing. He thought about protocol, about proper channels, about minding his own business. and finishing his sorting and going home to his apartment where the walls were close and familiar and nothing was ever unexpected. Then he thought about Maya, about how she'd stopped calling because he'd become the kind of person who followed protocol instead of following through, who chose procedure over presence, who let the important things slip away while he reorganized his filing system for the third time. He called the police. The officer who answered sounded young and bored. "Non-emergency line, this is Officer Patterson. I found a note in a donated coat. Someone saying they're trapped at Magnolia Hills nursing home, asking for help." A pause. "A note in a coat." "Yes, dated today, November 8th. Says his name is David Corliss." "Sir, we get calls like this sometimes. People with dementia wander, get confused, think they're being held against their will. Family members donate their belongings. It's sad, but it's not a police matter." "But what's your name?" "Sir," Graham gave it. "Mr. Vickers, I appreciate your concern, but nursing homes are licensed facilities. If there was actually someone being held against their will, we'd know about it. This is almost certainly someone with cognitive decline who got confused. The note might be weeks old, months. You can call the facility if you want to ease your mind, but I can't send a unit based on a note in a coat pocket." The officer hung up. Graham stood in the fluorescent buzz of the sorting room, holding the note. The handwriting stared back at him. Deliberate, specific, desperate. He looked up Magnolia Hill's phone number. It rang 4 times before connecting to an automated menu. Press 1 for admissions. Press 2 for billing. Press 3 for... He pressed 0. Another 4 rings. Then, "Magnolia Hills, this is Denise. Hi, I'm calling about a resident. David Corliss. One moment," typing sounds, then silence that stretched too long. "Sir, I'm not showing anyone by that name in our system." "Are you sure? Maybe he was a recent admission?" "I'm looking at our full census. No David Corliss. Is there anything else I can help you with?" Graham thanked her and hung up. He stood there, the note in his hand, feeling the weight of a decision he didn't want to make. He could throw it away, finish his sorting, go home, forget about this. That was the reasonable thing, the protocol thing, or he could drive to Riverside Drive and see for himself. It was 9:15 when he pulled into the Magnolia Hills parking lot. The building was low and sprawling, red brick with white shutters attempting to convey homey warmth, but achieving only institutional sterility. Most of the windows were dark. A few glowed with the blue light of television screens. The front entrance was locked, a keypad beside it. Through the glass doors, he could see a reception desk, empty, a hallway extending into darkness. He walked around the building's perimeter. Motion sensor lights clicked on as he passed flooding sections of sidewalk with harsh white illumination that made the shadows beyond seem darker by contrast. The back of the building featured a loading dock and a door marked "Staff Only." He tried the handle. Locked. He was about to give up, to accept that he'd done his due diligence and could now return to his sordid life with clear conscience, when he noticed the window, ground floor, partially open, 6 inches of gap between sill and frame, the window to what looked like a supply closet. Graham wasn't a person who broke into buildings. He paid his taxes on time. He returned shopping carts to their designated collection points. He never jaywalked, but he thought about Maya, about how she'd said during one of their last conversations that he'd become someone who cared more about rules than about people. He pushed the window up. It moved smoothly, silently. The opening was barely large enough, but he managed to squeeze through, landing awkwardly on a tile floor that smelled of bleach and something underneath the bleach. Something organic and sour that cleaning products couldn't quite mask. He pulled out his phone, using its light to navigate. He was indeed in a supply closet. There are shelves of adult diapers, cleaning supplies, stacks of linens. He opened the door carefully. The hallway beyond was dark except for emergency exit signs casting everything in dim red. His footsteps on the linoleum sounded impossibly loud. He passed closed doors, each with a nameplate: Margaret Foster, Robert Chen, Patricia Gonzalez, no David Corliss. He reached a nurse's station, empty, computer screen dark. A clipboard hung on the wall, resident names and room numbers in a grid. He scanned it quickly in his phone's light. No David Corliss. Maybe the officer had been right. Maybe this was a confused resident from weeks ago, the note an artifact of dementia-driven paranoia. Maybe. He heard the sound then, faint, rhythmic, coming from deeper in the building, tapping, like fingernails on glass. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap, tap. He followed the sound down a corridor that seemed to narrow as he walked, though that had to be a trick of the darkness and his nervous system's escalating alert status. The tapping grew louder. It was coming from a room at the end of the hall. The door was different from the others. No nameplate, a deadbolt installed on the outside. Graham's hand trembled as he reached for the bolt. He wanted to leave. Every instinct screamed at him to turn around, exit through that window, drive home, forget this night entirely. But he thought about Maya's voice. You just don't care about anything except your systems and your protocols. He slid the bolt open, turned the handle, pushed. The room was small, windowless, containing only a bed and a chair. On the bed sat a man, elderly, thin to the point of emaciation, wearing hospital pajamas that hung on his frame like cloth on a wire sculpture. The man looked up. His eyes were clear, devastatingly clear. You found my note, he said. Graham's mouth was dry. David Corliss? Yes? The man's voice was steady, rational, nothing confused or demented about it. How many others have you found? What? Notes. How many notes have you found? Just yours. Something that might have been disappointment crossed the man's face. I've been writing them for 3 months, putting them in pockets before they take the clothes away. I hoped. He stopped. You called the police? They said that I'm probably confused. Dementia. That this is a licensed facility. David Corliss smiled, and it was the saddest expression Graham had ever seen. That's what everyone thinks. That's why it works. Why what works? Can you help me walk? I'm very weak. Graham didn't move. I don't understand what's happening. I know, but we need to leave now, before Denise makes her rounds. Denise is at the front desk. No, Denise is never at the front desk. There is no front desk staff after 8 p.m. When you called, you were connected to an answering service. A very good one. They know all the right things to say. Graham's skin had gone cold. What is this place? Officially? A nursing home, actually. David Corliss stood, moving with the careful deliberation of someone whose body had become an uncertain instrument. A storage facility for people who won't be missed. That's insane. Yes, come on. Against every logical thought in his mind, Graham found himself supporting David Corliss's weight as they moved into the hallway. The old man was light, bird-boned, barely substantial. How long have you been here? Graham asked. I don't know. Time gets strange in that room. Months, I think. Since my daughter died, I had no other family. The estate lawyer suggested Magnolia Hills. Said it was very affordable, very accommodating. They picked me up in a van. I signed papers. And then he paused, breathing hard. I couldn't leave. They said I could, of course. Said I was free to go any time. But the doors were always locked when I tried. The phone always dead. And gradually I realized I was never going to leave. Not alive. They'd reached the supply closet. Graham helped David through the window, then climbed out himself. The cold air felt like absolution. My car's in front, Graham said. They moved around the building. Graham was reaching for his keys when the lights came on. Every exterior light on the building, sudden and bright and revealing. They stood frozen in the illumination like insects pinned to a board. The front door opened. A woman emerged. Older, wearing scrubs, hair pulled back. She was smiling. "Mr. Corliss," she said pleasantly, "it's time for your medication." "I'm leaving, Denise." "Of course you are, sweetie. Let's just get you your medication first, and then we'll talk about it." She started toward them. Graham moved to his car, fumbling with the keys, hands shaking. He got the door open, helped David inside. The old man was trembling violently now, making small sounds in his throat. "Mr. Vickers," Denise called. She was still smiling. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. Mr. Corliss is very confused. Dementia is such a terrible disease. He tends to wander, to make up stories. We've been very worried about him." Graham got in the driver's seat, started the engine. "If you take him," Denise said, and her voice had changed, something cold entering it. "You're kidnapping a vulnerable adult from a licensed care facility. The police will be very interested in that, especially since you broke in through a window. That's breaking and entering, trespassing, elderly abuse given his condition." Graham's foot hovered over the gas pedal. "She's right," David Corliss whispered. "You'll be arrested. Your life will be destroyed. I'm not worth that. I'm nobody. I don't matter." Graham thought about protocol, about proper channels, about how the system was supposed to work, about licensed facilities and official channels and doing things the right way. Then he thought about Maya, about the person he'd become, and the person he wanted to be. He pressed the gas. In the rearview mirror, he saw Denise standing in the parking lot, still smiling. She didn't chase them, didn't call out, just stood there, illuminated and patient, watching them go. "Where do we go?" Graham asked. "I don't know," David said. "Somewhere with witnesses. Somewhere public. Police station, maybe, where you can explain everything and I can—" He stopped. Graham glanced over. David Corliss was staring at his hands. "What's wrong?" "I don't remember my daughter's name." "You're in shock. It's normal to—" "No, I can't remember. I know I had a daughter. I know she died. But I can't remember her name, her face, anything about her." His breathing accelerated. "I can't remember where I lived before Magnolia Hills. I can't remember my profession. I can remember being in that room, writing notes. But before that," he looked at Graham, and his eyes held a terror that went beyond fear into something existential. "What if Denise is right? What if I am confused? What if I really do have dementia and none of this is real? You're real. You were locked in that room. That happened. But what if the room was for my own safety? What if I'm dangerous, or I wander, or—" "You're not confused," Graham said firmly. "You asked for help. I found your note. We're going to figure this out." But even as he said it, doubt crept in. What if he just kidnapped a dementia patient? What if David Corliss really was confused, really did need care, and Graham had just committed a felony based on a note that might have been written in a moment of paranoid delusion? He drove to the police station on Brookwood Avenue, the one with lights and people and the safety of official presence. He parked, helped David out of the car. Together they walked toward the entrance. A police officer was coming out as they approached, middle-aged, professional-looking, his nameplate reading Sergeant Morrison. "Excuse me," Graham said. "I need to report." The officer looked at David Corliss. Something changed in his expression. Recognition. "Mr. Corliss," he said warmly. "There you are. Magnolia Hills called. They were worried sick." "No," Graham said. "He was locked in a room. He wrote a note asking for help. I found it in a donated coat." "Sir, I understand. This is difficult to witness, but Mr. Corliss has advanced Alzheimer's. He wanders sometimes, gets confused, thinks he's being held against his will. It's very common. The facility has his medical records, his family's authorization for care, everything completely legal and appropriate." "He has no family," Graham said. "His daughter died. His daughter visits twice a month, sir. I know this is confusing, but we need to get Mr. Corliss back to his care facility. He needs his medication." Graham looked at David. The old man was staring at the sergeant with an expression of absolute despair. "I don't remember," David whispered. "I don't remember a daughter visiting, but I don't remember much of anything anymore. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am just confused." "No," Graham said. "I found your note. Today's date. You asked for help." "I write notes every day," David said softly. "I think. Or maybe I don't. Maybe I just think I do. Time is very strange now. Everything is strange. Maybe I should go back. Maybe that's where I belong." "We have a van coming," Sergeant Morrison said. "We'll get you back to Magnolia Hills. Make sure you're comfortable. Sir," he addressed Graham, "I appreciate your concern, but this is a medical matter. The best thing you can do is let us handle it." The van arrived 10 minutes later, white, unmarked. 2 attendants in scrubs, pleasant and professional. They helped David Corliss inside with practiced gentleness. Graham watched them drive away. "You did a good thing," Sergeant Morrison said. "Trying to help. But sometimes the right thing is trusting the system. These facilities know what they're doing." Graham drove home. His apartment was quiet and orderly and exactly as he'd left it. He sat at his kitchen table, the note still in his pocket. He pulled it out. Read it again. "Please help me. My name is David Corliss. I am trapped in the facility on Riverside Drive. They won't let me leave. If you find this, call the police. November 8th. Please." The handwriting was clear. The date was today. The desperation was real. Or was it? Graham had spent his entire career in quality assurance. His job was finding discrepancies, catching errors, maintaining standards. He was good at it. He was thorough. He was never wrong about the data. But what if the data was compromised? What if he'd seen what he wanted to see? A chance to be a hero, to be someone who helped, to prove to Maya and to himself that he was more than just protocols and procedures. He called Maya. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. "Hey, it's Dad. Something happened tonight. Something strange. I tried to help someone. I think. Or maybe I just interfered with a medical situation I didn't understand. I don't know. I guess I just wanted to tell you that I tried. I tried to be better. I don't know if it mattered. Call me back if you want. I love you." He hung up. 3 weeks later, Graham was processing donations at the community center when he found another note. Same handwriting, same paper, same blue ink. "Please help me. My name is David Corliss. I am trapped in the facility on Riverside Drive. They won't let me leave. If you find this, call the police. November 29th. Please. Graham stood in the fluorescent buzz, holding the note, feeling his careful world tilt on its axis. He could call the police. Drive to Magnolia Hills. Try again. Or he could throw it away. Follow protocol. Trust the system. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Got your message. Want to get coffee this weekend? I miss you, Dad. Graham looked at the note, at his phone, at the donation bins waiting to be sorted. He thought about control and chaos, about protocols and humanity, about the difference between being right and doing right. He put the note in his pocket. Control was all he had left, and control, he was beginning to understand, had abandoned him a long time ago. Story 2. The apartment smelled of nothing when Cora Geller first crossed its threshold. She stood in the center of the living room, breathing carefully through her nose, testing the air. Her therapist, Dr. Ringgold, had encouraged mindful engagement with space. Notice what you notice, she'd said during their last session. Don't judge it, just observe. What Cora observed was absence. No smell of previous occupants, no cooking odors, no traces of pets or cigarettes, or the human accumulation of living. The air was clean in a way that felt sterile, medical, wrong. She was 32 years old, recently laid off from her position as a market research analyst, and running out of the money her severance had provided. The apartment on Divisadero Street was impossibly cheap for San Francisco. 500 square feet, hardwood floors, bay window overlooking the street. $800 a month, utilities included. Previous tenant broke the lease suddenly, the landlord had explained. His name was Mr. Huang, and he'd shown her the place with the disinterested efficiency of someone who'd done this many times. 3 months remaining. If you can move in immediately, I'll waive the deposit. That should have been her first warning. Nothing in San Francisco was cheap. Nothing came without deposit, without first and last month's rent, without a bidding war against 20 other desperate applicants. But Cora's anxiety medication was expensive, even with insurance she no longer had. Her therapist was $200 per session. The unemployment office had flags on her, claimed for reasons no one would explain. She was bleeding money and had perhaps 2 months before she'd have to move back to Ohio. Back to her mother's house. Back to being the daughter who tried San Francisco and failed. I'll take it, she'd said. That was 3 days ago. Now, standing in the emptiness, she felt the first whisper of unease that had become her constant companion since the layoff. The feeling of being watched, of something being wrong in a way she couldn't articulate, of danger she couldn't pinpoint. Dr. Ringgold said this was her anxiety manifesting, creating threats where none existed, catastrophizing. The feeling is real, she'd said. The threat is not. That's important to understand, Cora unpacked methodically. Clothes in the closet, books on the built-in shelves, kitchen supplies in the small galley kitchen, her laptop on the wooden table that served as both dining and workspace. By evening, the apartment looked lived in. By midnight, she was in bed, listening to the sounds of the city. Traffic on Divisadero, distant sirens, the building settling with small creaks and groans, and underneath it all, so faint she almost missed it, the smell, sweet, chemical, with something organic beneath it that reminded her of flowers left too long in a vase, that moment before beauty becomes rot. She got up, traced it to the closet, opened the door. The smell was stronger here, emanating from the walls themselves, or maybe from behind them. She went back to bed, but sleep was elusive. The smell seemed to grow stronger as night deepened. Or maybe she was just becoming more aware of it, her senses sharpening in the darkness. At 3:47 a.m., her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "Can't sleep. Worried about you. That apartment. Are you sure it's safe?" Cora stared at the message. She'd mentioned the new place in passing during their last call. Hadn't given details. Certainly hadn't said anything to cause concern. "It's fine, Mom. Go to sleep." 3 dots appeared, pulsed, disappeared. Then, something feels wrong. Cora turned off her phone. The smell was definitely stronger, sweet enough now to taste on her tongue, cloying and thick. She got up, opened the bay window. Cold November air rushed in, bringing the smell of fog and exhaust to the ocean 6 miles west. But the sweet smell remained. If anything, the fresh air made it more noticeable by contrast. She didn't sleep that night. In the morning, she searched the apartment thoroughly, checked under sinks, behind the refrigerator, inside cabinets, looking for the source. Dead mouse, rotting food left by the previous tenant, mold, something to explain. She found nothing. By afternoon, she'd convinced herself it was fading. By evening, she barely noticed it. The human nose adapted quickly. What seemed overwhelming at first became background. She made dinner, pasta with jarred sauce, ate at her laptop, scrolling job postings, marketing coordinator, user research analyst, content strategist. She'd sent 43 applications in 2 weeks, received 4 rejections. The rest simply disappeared into whatever void consumed unwanted resumes. She was rinsing her plate when she heard it. Music. Faint, muffled, coming from somewhere in the building. Classical. Piano. Something she almost recognized. She followed the sound to the wall between her apartment and the next unit. Pressed her ear against the plaster. The music was clearer here, but still muted, as if traveling through not just walls but distance, time, some medium thicker than air. She knocked on her neighbor's door. No answer. She tried again. Waited. The door opened 4 inches. Chain engaged. An eye appeared in the gap. Female, older, sharp and assessing. "Yes?" "Hi, I'm Cora. I just moved into 304. Next door." "Yes?" "I was wondering about the music. Is it coming from your apartment?" "I don't play music." "It's piano. Classical. It sounds like it's coming through our shared wall." The eye studied her. "You're in Sarah's apartment." "I'm sorry." "Sarah Matheson, the previous tenant. That was her apartment. Now it's yours." "Did you know her?" "No one knew her. She kept to herself. But sometimes I heard her crying. Through the wall." The eye moved, scanning Cora from head to shoes. "You should leave." "I'm sorry." "That apartment. You should leave while you can." The door closed. Cora stood in the hallway, feeling her heart rate accelerate, the familiar tightness in her chest, the sensation of the world tilting slightly on its axis. Dr. Ringgold's voice in her head. "When you feel panic rising, pause. Name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 5 things: hallway carpet, light fixture, door, apartment number, fire extinguisher. 4 things: wall texture, her own heartbeat, the floor beneath her feet, her phone in her pocket. 3 things: traffic outside, the building's heating system, her own breathing." The panic ebbed. Her neighbor was clearly eccentric. The music was probably from another apartment, sound traveling in unexpected ways through old buildings. The smell was something ordinary she'd identify eventually. Everything was fine. She was fine. That night, the smell was stronger, sweet enough to make her nauseous. She opened every window, turned on a fan, lit a candle she'd bought at Walgreens. The candle was labeled Ocean Breeze, but what it actually smelled like was petrochemicals pretending to be nature. The sweet smell persisted underneath, as if the candle scent and the apartment scent existed in different layers of reality, unable to interact or cancel each other out. At 2:16 a.m., her phone buzzed. Text from a number she didn't recognize. "You need to leave that place." Her hands went cold. She stared at the message. Typed, "Who is this?" The reply came immediately. "Someone who lived there before. Get out while you still can." "Is this Sarah Matheson?" 3 dots, pulsing. Then they stopped. No reply came. Cora sat up in bed, fully awake now, adrenaline flooding her system. She Googled the phone number. No results. She tried to call it back. The number rang once, then disconnected. She searched Sarah Matheson, Divisadero Street, San Francisco. The results made her stomach drop. A news article from 8 months ago. Small, buried in the local crime section. Woman, 24, found dead in apartment. Police investigating. She clicked. Sarah Matheson was found deceased in her apartment on Divisadero Street on March 14th. Cause of death is under investigation. Police are asking anyone with information to contact Cora's apartment. Sarah Matheson had died here, in this room, maybe in this bed. She stood up, backing away from the mattress as if it might contaminate her. Her breathing was rapid, shallow, panic attack coming. She recognized the signs. 5 things you can see. But she didn't want to see, didn't want to acknowledge where she was, what had happened here. She spent the rest of the night on the couch, lights on, searching for more information about Sarah Matheson. There wasn't much. 24 years old. Moved to San Francisco from Portland. Worked at a coffee shop on Valencia Street. No family mentioned. No suspicious circumstances reported. As dawn grayed the windows, Cora made a decision. She would break the lease, lose the deposit she'd never paid, find somewhere else, anywhere else. But when she called Mr. Wong at 9 a.m., his phone went straight to voicemail. She left a message. Called again at noon. Voicemail. At 3 p.m. Voicemail. She went to the address he'd listed on the lease paperwork. An office building in the Tenderloin. The suite number didn't exist. The building's directory had no listing for the property management company. She tried the emergency maintenance number. Disconnected. At 7 p.m. Sitting in her apartment as darkness gathered, Cora had to acknowledge a truth that made her skin prickle with cold sweat. She had no way to contact her landlord, no way to break the lease, no proof that Mr. Huang existed beyond the paperwork she'd signed. The smell was overpowering now, sweet and thick and undeniably organic. The smell of flowers rotting, of fruit fermenting, of something that had been beautiful becoming something else. She pressed her face into her jacket, breathing through fabric. It helped marginally. Her phone buzzed. The unknown number again. It starts with the smell, then the dreams. Then you start forgetting things. Who you were supposed to be. And then you're just here, forever. Like me, like the others. Cora typed with shaking hands. What is this place? A trap. For people no one will miss. People who are alone, desperate, willing to take an apartment that's too cheap because they don't have any other choice. How do I leave? You can't. Not anymore. You've been here 3 days. That's too long. It's in you now. The perfume. What perfume? You smell it, don't you? The sweet smell. That's not coming from the apartment. That's coming from you. Cora lifted her arm, pressed her nose to her wrist, breathed in. The sweet smell was stronger there. emanating from her skin. No, no, that was impossible. The smell was in the apartment, in the walls. She traced it to the closet, but had she? Or had she just assumed? She went to the bathroom, looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes looked hollow. When had she last eaten? She couldn't remember. This morning. Yesterday. She lifted her shirt, examined her torso. Her skin looked normal, pale, but that was genetics. Smooth, unmarked. But when she leaned close to the mirror, she could see something beneath the surface. Little faint traceries, like veins but wrong. Branching patterns spreading from her chest toward her extremities. Dark purple, almost black. She pulled her shirt down, backed away from the mirror. Her phone buzzed. I tried to leave on the 4th day. Made it as far as the street. Then I couldn't remember where I was going or why. Couldn't remember my name. Came back inside. It was easier inside. Quieter. The smell was comforting by then. Like home. Cora ran. She grabbed her jacket, her phone, her keys. Didn't pack, didn't plan. Just moved toward the door with the single-minded purpose of escape. Her hand touched the doorknob and stopped. She stood there, frozen, trying to remember why she was leaving. There was a reason, an important reason. Something about the smell was so strong now. Sweet and thick and actually quite pleasant once you stopped fighting it. Like perfume. Expensive perfume. The kind women wore in department stores. The kind that came in beautiful glass bottles and cost more than groceries. She liked perfume. Had a collection once. Before what? She couldn't remember. She turned away from the door, walked back into the apartment. It was nice here. Quiet, safe. The hardwood floors gleamed in the lamplight. The bay window showed the street. All those people rushing somewhere, stressed and purposeful and trapped in the exhausting machinery of living. She was tired. So tired. She lay down on the couch. Her phone was buzzing. Had been buzzing. Someone calling. She picked it up. Cora, honey, are you okay? You haven't answered in days. I'm worried sick. Her mother's voice. From far away. From another life. I'm fine, Mom. You don't sound fine. You sound strange. Disconnected. I'm just tired. I'm coming out there. I'm getting on a plane tomorrow. No, don't. Cora, I need to sleep now. She hung up, turned off the phone. The apartment was very quiet. She could hear the building settling, the heating system cycling, and underneath, very faint, the piano music. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, gray daylight filled the window. Or was it the same gray as before? Time felt elastic here. Unreliable. She got up, walked to the kitchen. She should eat. When had she last eaten? The refrigerator was full of food she didn't remember buying. Fresh vegetables, yogurt, orange juice. She stood staring at it, trying to remember shopping, unpacking, storing these items. Nothing came. She closed the refrigerator. The smell was part of her now. She understood that. It wasn't something she was smelling. It was something she was producing. The apartment had gotten inside her somehow, chemically, biologically, and now she was becoming what it needed her to become. Perfume for the next tenant. Sweetness to mask the rot. She went to the bay window, looked out at Divisadero Street. A woman was walking by, young, carrying boxes, looking up at the building with the expression of someone who'd just signed a lease. Cora wanted to warn her, wanted to open the window and shout, "Run! Don't come inside! This place is a trap!" But she couldn't remember why. Couldn't remember what was wrong with the apartment. It was lovely here, peaceful, safe. The woman disappeared from view. Moments later, or maybe hours, Cora heard footsteps in the hallway. A door opening. 304. Her apartment. No, not her apartment. Not anymore. Where was she? She looked around. The apartment was empty. No furniture, no clothes, no books. Just bare floors and bare walls and gray light through windows. How long had she been here? She walked to the closet, opened the door. The smell was strongest here, sweet and thick and overwhelming. She stepped inside. The closet was deeper than it should be, darker. She walked forward, into shadows that shouldn't exist in a space this small. She found them in the darkness. The others, Sarah Matheson, and before her, a woman named Claire, and before Claire, someone else whose name had been lost. All of them standing in the dark, wearing the faces they'd had when they'd first arrived, young and hopeful and desperate enough to take an apartment that was too cheap because they had no other choice. Cora joined them. The piano music played, faint and distant and eternal. In apartment 304, the new tenant opened her boxes, unpacked her things, and breathed in the sweet smell that would become her. That was already becoming her. That had been waiting for her all along. And in the closet that was deeper than space allowed, Cora Geller stood with the others, still and quiet, and forever trying to remember her mother's face. Her therapist's name, the person she'd been before she'd become Perfume. She could almost remember, on the edge of her thoughts, just out of reach, and every day she looked a little less like herself. Story 3. The lighthouse on Cragstone Point had been automated since 1987, but it still required a keeper. Not for the light itself. That ran on timers and solar panels and redundancy systems designed to function for months without human intervention, but for the station. The buildings needed maintenance. The grounds needed upkeep. The Coast Guard required someone present to monitor weather conditions and report irregularities. Nolan Hetherington was 2 months into a 6-month posting when he first heard the singing. He was 41 years old, recently divorced, former high school history teacher who'd walked away from a career that had gradually transformed from calling to endurance test. The lighthouse keeper position had appeared on a job board at 2 a.m. during one of his increasingly common bouts of insomnia. Room and board included, minimal human contact, 6 months of solitude to figure out what came next. The interview had been conducted via video call. A Coast Guard administrator, professional and brief. You understand, this is an isolated posting. The nearest town is 14 miles. Supply delivery is weekly weather permitting. No cell service. Satellite internet only. That's fine, Nolan had said. And it had been fine. The first weeks had been exactly what he needed. The lighthouse stood on a promontory of rock jutting into the Atlantic, connected to the mainland by a gravel road that flooded at high tide. The station consisted of the lighthouse itself, a keeper's cottage, and a storage building. The ocean was omnipresent, its sound, its smell, its vast indifference. Nolan settled into routine. He maintained the equipment. He filed weather reports. He read the books he'd been meaning to read for years. He slept without medication for the first time since the divorce. The singing started on a Thursday in late October. He was checking the lighthouse lamp, a weekly inspection that had become almost meditative, when he heard it. Female voice, a wordless melody, so faint he almost missed it under the wind and waves. He stopped, tilting his head. The singing continued, beautiful in a way that made his chest ache. Not sad exactly, but full of longing. The kind of sound that made you remember every person you'd ever loved and lost. He traced it to the eastern window, the one facing open ocean, pressed his face to the glass. The water stretched empty to the horizon. No boats, No swimmers, nothing but gray sea under gray sky. The singing faded. Or maybe it had never been there. Maybe he'd heard a gull's cry and his isolation-starved brain had transformed it into something human. He finished his inspection, returned to the cottage, made dinner, told himself he'd imagined it. But that night, lying in bed, he heard it again, clearer now. Definitely female, definitely singing. The melody was unfamiliar but achingly beautiful. The kind of music that bypassed cognition and spoke directly to something older in the brain, something that remembered when humans were fewer and the world was mostly darkness and mystery. He got up, went to the window. The ocean was black under cloud cover. The automated lamp rotated behind him, its beams sweeping across water, illuminating nothing but waves. The singing continued. He couldn't identify its source. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, from the ocean itself. He stood at the window until the singing faded into the wind. Then he went back to bed, but sleep was impossible. His mind turned over explanations. An atmospheric phenomenon, sound carrying from the mainland in some trick of wind and geography. His own subconscious manifesting auditory hallucinations from isolation. The singing didn't happen every day. Sometimes a week would pass in silence. Then he'd hear it, always at dusk or after dark. Always that same wordless melody, always female. Sometimes it sounded close, as if the singer stood just outside his door. Other times it seemed distant, carried across miles of water. He tried to record it once, held his phone up, capturing 5 minutes of audio. When he played it back, there was nothing but wind and waves. The singing was absent, as if it existed only in the moment of hearing, only for him. Nolan had never been superstitious. He'd taught history for 17 years, had spent his adult life examining evidence, evaluating sources, distinguishing fact from folklore. He didn't believe in ghosts or supernatural phenomena. He believed in rational explanations. But he also believed what he was hearing. In early November, the supply boat brought not just food and equipment, but a visitor. Martin Prescott, the Coast Guard administrator who'd conducted Nolan's interview. He arrived wearing an expression that suggested this visit was both routine inspection and something else. "How are you settling in?" Prescott asked over coffee in the cottage kitchen. "Fine, no issues. The isolation suits you." "Yes." Prescott nodded, studying him over the rim of his mug. "Anyone else would be climbing the walls by now. 2 months in a place like this. It does things to people. The solitude, the sound of the ocean, the darkness. Our minds weren't designed for this much emptiness. I find it peaceful." "Do you?" Prescott set down his mug. "Tell me, have you experienced anything unusual? Anything that seemed off? Strange sounds, maybe?" Nolan's heart rate increased. "Like what?" "Some keepers report auditory phenomena. Music, voices, usually starts around the 6-week mark. The brain compensating for lack of stimulus by creating its own." He paused. "It's nothing to be concerned about. Nothing to be embarrassed about. It's actually quite common in isolated postings." "I haven't experienced anything like that," Nolan lied. Prescott watched him for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Good. That's good." He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the ocean. "This station has a history. You know that." "I know it was built in 1874, automated in 87. Between those dates, it had 19 keepers. Average tenure was about a year. Some stayed longer. Most left early. 3 died here." He turned back to face Nolan. "1 fell from the lighthouse gallery. 1 drowned. The 3rd walked into the..." Ocean one night in February and never came back. You're trying to scare me? I'm trying to prepare you. This place... Prescott gestured vaguely at the walls, the windows, the promontory of rock beyond. There's something about it. The isolation, maybe. The constancy of the ocean. The lighthouse beam rotating every night, illuminating the same empty space over and over. It creates patterns in your perception. Your mind starts filling in gaps. Seeing things, hearing things. And you let people stay here? We need someone here. The station needs maintenance. And some people like you, I think, are good at being alone, are even improved by it. As long as you understand what's real and what's your mind creating patterns from noise. After Prescott left, Nolan stood at the eastern window, watching the supply boat diminish toward the mainland. The conversation had unsettled him. Not because it suggested he was experiencing hallucinations, but because Prescott had seemed to expect it, as if the singing was a known phenomenon, as if every keeper heard it eventually. That night, the singing was louder than ever before. He stood at his bedroom window listening. The voice was heartbreakingly beautiful. He found himself crying without understanding why. The sound carried such longing, such sorrow, that his own grief, for his marriage, for his teaching career, for the life he'd imagined and failed to build, seemed to resonate with it. He opened the window. Cold air rushed in, salt and seaweed, and the permanent dampness of coastal November. The singing continued. So close now he felt certain the singer must be just below, standing on the rocks. "Hello?" he called. The singing stopped. The silence was immense. The ocean kept its rhythm, but the singing was gone, and the absence felt like loss. "Please," Nolan said, "don't stop." For a long moment, nothing. Then, very softly, the singing resumed. A single phrase repeated. 4 notes, descending, unbearably sad. Nolan closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him. He felt something in his chest loosening, something that had been clenched since the divorce. Since his wife had looked at him one morning at breakfast and said, "I don't think you've been happy for a very long time." "I don't think I have either." The singing continued. He opened his eyes. On the rocks below, illuminated by the lighthouse beam's next rotation, he saw her, a woman, naked, her skin pale as the foam on breaking waves, her hair dark and long, moving in the wind. She stood facing the ocean, and when the light swept past again, she was still there, singing, her back to him. The rational part of his mind cataloged impossibilities. The rocks were sharp. The water was 43 degrees. No one could survive standing naked in this wind. This was impossible, but she was there. The light rotated again. This time she was turned toward him. Her face was beautiful in a way that made his earlier tears seem inadequate response. She was looking directly at him, and she was still singing. Nolan found himself moving, out of the bedroom, down the stairs, out the cottage door, across the rocky ground toward the promontory edge. The wind was vicious, tearing at his clothes. The ocean roared below. The woman stood on the rocks just above the tide line, still singing. He stopped at the edge. 10 feet separated them. 10 feet and a drop of 15 feet to jagged rocks and churning water. "Who are you?" he asked. She smiled, or something approximating a smile, and continued singing. "Are you real?" The question seemed to amuse her. Her smile widened. In the lighthouse beam's next rotation, he saw her teeth. Too many, too sharp. He should have felt afraid, should have run. But the singing was so beautiful, and he was so tired of being alone. And there was something in her expression that seemed to understand him in a way no one had in years. What do you want? He asked. She stopped singing, spoke. Her voice was like the ocean, vast and deep and containing multitudes. Company. How long have you been here? Always. Since the first light was lit. Since ships began dying on these rocks. Since men first came to this lonely place and stayed until the loneliness transformed them into something that could survive it. You've killed people. I've welcomed them. When they were ready. When the solitude had hollowed them out enough to hear me. To see me. To understand that they belonged here with me more than they ever belonged in the world they left behind. The lighthouse beam rotated. In its light, he saw her clearly. She was human and not human, beautiful and monstrous, impossible and undeniably present. The others, he said, the keepers who died, they came to you. They were ready. The world had finished with them, or they had finished with the world. The distinction doesn't matter. And you think I'm ready? She tilted her head, considering. Not yet. But you're listening. That's how it starts. First you hear me, then you see me, then you understand, and then... She gestured at the rocks, the ocean, the vastness. You join me. What if I leave? What if I request transfer, quit, go back to the mainland? You won't. How do you know? Because you came here to be alone. Because the world hurt you. Because you're tired of being a person, of maintaining the fiction that you want. Connection, purpose, meaning. You came here to disappear. I'm just offering to help you do it completely. The lighthouse beam swept past again. She was gone. Nolan stood at the edge, listening to the ocean, the wind, the eternal rhythm of waves against rock. He felt very calm, very clear. He went back to the cottage, climbed into bed, slept better than he had in weeks. The next morning, Prescott called via satellite phone. Just checking in. How are you doing? Fine. No unusual experiences? No. A pause. Good. That's good. Listen, if you do experience anything, sounds, visions, anything that seems off, call immediately. Don't wait. These things can escalate quickly in isolation. I understand. And Nolan, if you need to come in early, if you decide this posting isn't for you, there's no shame in that. Most people can't handle this level of solitude. The ones who can... He trailed off. Just call if you need to. Nolan hung up. He made coffee, filed his weather report, performed his daily maintenance. The routine was soothing. The solitude was perfect. That night, he heard the singing again. He went to the window but didn't open it. Didn't call out. Just listened. She appeared on the rocks, visible without the lighthouse beam now, as if she was becoming more solid, more present. She sang. He listened. This became their routine. November became December. The supply boat came weekly. Prescott called every few days. Nolan filed his reports, maintained the station, and listened to the singing. He found himself spending more time at the eastern window, standing on the rocks, watching her. She never approached, never spoke again, just sang. The melody had worked its way into his neural pathways. He heard it, even when she wasn't singing, hummed it while cooking, woke with it in his mind. On Christmas Eve, during a call, Prescott said, "You sound different." "How?" "Calmer. Too calm." "Nolan, I think you should come in. Take a break. See friends. Remember what it's like to be around people." "I don't have friends." "Family, then." "My ex-wife is my family. I don't think she wants to see me." "Then just come in. Stay at a hotel. Walk around town. Break the isolation." "I'm fine here." "That's what they all say." Prescott's voice carried something like resignation. "Right up until they're not." Nolan hung up. That night, he went to the rocks without waiting for the singing. She was already there, as if she'd known he was coming. "I'm not afraid anymore," he said. "I know. I've been thinking about what you said, about being ready, about finishing with the world. And I think I finished a long time ago. I just didn't realize it." She smiled, extended her hand. He looked at it, at her, at the ocean beyond. He thought about his former life, teaching teenagers who didn't care about history, trying to hold together a marriage that had died by inches, coming home to an empty apartment, scrolling job boards at 2 a.m. because he couldn't sleep and couldn't think of any reason to try. He thought about the last 6 weeks, the peace, the solitude, the singing. He took her hand. Her skin was cold, cold as deep water, but her grip was firm. "What happens now?" he asked. "You become what you were always meant to be, what this place makes of everyone who stays too long. We keep the light, we sing, we wait for the next keeper who's lonely enough to hear us. Will it hurt? Only briefly. Then it's just the singing, forever." The lighthouse beam rotated. In its light, Nolan saw others, standing in the water, on the rocks, all around the promontory, keepers from decades past, all singing now, their voices joining hers in harmony. He stepped off the edge. The cold was absolute. The water closed over him. His lungs burned. His body fought for survival, even as his mind accepted the inevitable. And then the burning stopped. The cold stopped. Everything stopped except the singing. He opened his eyes underwater. She was there, and the others, all singing. He tried to join them and found he could. Found his voice blending with theirs in a melody that was older than the lighthouse, older than the promontory, old as the first sailor who drowned in these waters and discovered that death wasn't ending but transformation. The supply boat came the following week, found the station empty, the lighthouse still functioning, the cottage door open, fresh coffee in the pot, still warm. Nolan Hetherington's belongings were packed neatly, his weather reports filed. Through the previous day, no note, no explanation, no sign of struggle. The Coast Guard searched the promontory, the beaches, the waters, found nothing. He walked into the ocean, Prescott told his superiors. Like the others, the isolation got to him. They closed the investigation, listed Nolan as missing, presumed dead, posted the keeper position, began accepting applications, and every night, from the rocks of Cragstone Point, the singing continues. Beautiful and lonely and patient, waiting for the next keeper, for the next person hollow enough to hear it, ready enough to understand it, lonely enough to join it. The melody never changes, never ends, and Nolan Hetherington sings with the others, his voice blending perfectly with the chorus of the drowned, forever keeping the light, forever calling to the next keeper who will arrive seeking solitude and find something older, something that transforms isolation into eternity. Story 4. Dr. Evelyn Park's private practice on Mercer Street had been open for 6 years when Marcus Tillman first appeared in her waiting room on a Tuesday in October. She almost didn't see him at first, almost walked directly past him to her office. He sat so still, so quietly, that he seemed less like a person and more like an artifact someone had placed in the chair and forgotten. "Marcus," she said. He looked up. His eyes were gray, the color of overcast skies, and they focused on her with an intensity that made her take an involuntary step back. "Dr. Park?" "Yes, come in." He followed her into her office, sat in the client chair with the careful precision of someone placing a fragile object. Everything about him suggested restraint. His posture, his expression, the way he folded his hands in his lap. Evelyn was 38 years old, had been practicing therapy for 12 years, and considered herself reasonably skilled at reading people. Marcus Tillman was unreadable. "So," she said, settling into her own chair, notebook ready, "what brings you to therapy?" "I died 3 months ago." She kept her expression neutral. This wasn't the strangest opening statement she'd heard. Dissociation, trauma, grief, all could manifest in language that seemed delusional, but represented actual psychological experience. That must have been difficult. It was quick. Heart attack. I was in the kitchen making coffee. One moment I was standing there, the next I was on the floor, the next I was... He paused. "Somewhere else?" "Can you describe where you were?" "Nowhere. Nothing. Not darkness. That implies absence of light. This was absence of existence. No time. No sensation. No thought. Just not being." "That sounds terrifying." "It was perfect." His voice carried something that might have been longing. Complete peace. No anxiety. No obligation. No identity to maintain. Just peaceful non-existence. "But you're here now." "Yes." "What happened? What brought you back?" "They did. The paramedics. My neighbor heard me fall, called 911. They restarted my heart. Brought me back." His hands clenched. "I didn't ask to come back. And now you're having trouble adjusting." "I'm not adjusting. I'm not meant to be here. I died. My time was finished. But they violated that. Extended something that was supposed to end. And now I'm..." He struggled for words. "Displaced. I don't belong in this world anymore." Evelyn made notes. Classic features of PTSD following cardiac arrest. Some patients experienced profound existential crisis after near-death experiences. The medical literature was extensive. What we're discussing is actually quite common. Many patients who've experienced cardiac arrest report similar feelings. Dislocation, existential questioning, the sense that they somehow missed their chance to leave. It's a recognized psychological phenomenon, and it's treatable. You think I'm traumatized? I think you had an experience that challenged your understanding of existence. That's inherently traumatic, but we can work through it, help you reintegrate, find meaning in your continued life. He looked at her with those gray eyes. What if there's no meaning to find? What if I'm not supposed to be here, and everything after my death is just aftermath? Echoes of someone who already ended. Do you feel like an echo? I don't feel like anything. That's the problem. I came back empty. Whatever I was, whatever made me a person, didn't return with my heartbeat. They talked for the remainder of the session. Evelyn established baseline information. Marcus was 42, worked as an accountant, unmarried, no close family. His life before the cardiac arrest had been solitary but functional. Since the revival, he'd taken medical leave from work, stayed in his apartment, struggled to find any reason to continue existing beyond sheer biological momentum. Classic depression, probably required medication consultation alongside therapy. Evelyn scheduled him for twice-weekly sessions. He came to every appointment, always on time, always sitting in the waiting room with that unsettling stillness. They progressed through the standard treatment framework: cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness exercises, gradually reintroducing structure and meaning. Nothing helped. I'm trying, he told her during their 6th session. I'm doing the exercises. I'm challenging the negative thoughts. I'm engaging with the world. But it's like I'm performing actions without any internal experience of doing them. Like I'm watching myself from outside, puppeting this body through motions it was supposed to have stopped making. That sense of dissociation is part of the trauma. As we continue working, you'll start feeling more connected to yourself, more present in your experiences. Will I? He leaned forward. Or will I just get better at pretending, at simulating the responses of a living person while knowing I'm actually something else? What do you think you are, if not a living person? I think I'm what happens when death doesn't finish properly. When the biological process continues, but the essential thing, the consciousness, the soul, whatever you want to call it, has already left. I think I'm a body walking around empty, and eventually something will notice and correct the error. Evelyn made a note to revisit medication consultation with his psychiatrist. The ideation was becoming concerning. After that session, she spent her evening writing up case notes, trying to construct a treatment plan for someone who believed their very existence was a mistake. She'd worked with suicidal clients before, with people who wanted to die. Marcus was different. He believed he already had died, that his continued existence was somehow ontologically wrong. She was still thinking about it when she went to bed. Still thinking about it when she woke at 3:18 a.m. to find Marcus Tillman sitting in the chair beside her bed. She screamed. He didn't move, just sat there in the darkness of her bedroom, hands folded in his lap, looking at her with those gray eyes. "How did you get in?" she managed. "I don't know. I was in my apartment. Then I was here. It's been happening more frequently. I'm slipping between places, between states of being." Evelyn reached for her phone. Marcus raised a hand. "Please don't. I'm not here to hurt you. I don't think I can hurt anyone. I'm not substantial enough for that. You broke into my house." "I didn't break in. I just arrived. Like water finding cracks. I'm becoming less solid, less defined. The boundaries between here and not here are getting thinner." "Marcus, this is a serious violation of boundaries. You need to leave. Now! And we need to discuss whether we can continue therapy after I'm not your client anymore." "What? I died. Remember 3 months ago?" "Dr. Park, you've been seeing a dead person. Haven't you wondered why no one else in your waiting room ever acknowledges me? Why your receptionist never checks me in?" Her heart was hammering. "Jenny checks you in every time." "Does she? Or do you just remember her doing it?" Evelyn thought back, tried to recall specific instances, found the memories slippery, uncertain. "This is a delusion," she said. "You're experiencing psychosis. We need to get you to a hospital. Call Jenny, right now. Ask her about me. It's 3 in the morning. Please." She picked up her phone, dialed Jenny's number, hands shaking. It rang 4 times. "Hello?" Jenny's voice, thick with sleep. "Jenny, it's Dr. Park. I'm sorry to wake you. I need to ask you about a client, Marcus Tillman. Can you tell me about his appointments? When he came in? If he filled out intake paperwork?" Silence. Then, "Dr. Park, are you okay? You don't have any clients named Marcus Tillman." "I've been seeing him twice a week for over a month. I do all your intake paperwork. I maintain all your client files. There's no Marcus Tillman. There's never been a Marcus Tillman." Evelyn hung up. Marcus was still sitting in the chair. "You see? This is impossible." "Yes, but it's happening anyway. I told you, I died. But something brought me back. Not all the way. Just enough to be present. To seem real to people who are expecting me to be real. But I'm not in your files. I'm not in any system. I'm just here, and gradually becoming less here. If you're dead, if you're a ghost or whatever you're claiming to be, why come to therapy? Because I don't know what I am. I don't understand what's happened to me. I thought maybe you could help me figure it out. Help me understand why I'm still here when I'm not supposed to be." Evelyn stood up, turned on the light. The illumination didn't make things better. Marcus looked exactly as he always did. Solid, present, completely ordinary except for the extraordinary claim that he was dead. I need you to leave. I can't. Not yet. There's something I need to tell you. Something I've been trying to tell you for weeks, but the words won't come during sessions. Maybe because sessions are about the pretense of normalcy, of treatment. And I can't pretend anymore. What do you need to tell me? There are others. Other people like me. The almost dead. The ones who got brought back but didn't fully return. We're everywhere. You've probably seen us without realizing. We're the people who sit too still, who don't quite cast shadows correctly, who everyone forgets immediately after encountering. We exist in the margins, between life and death, and we're increasing. Why? Because medicine keeps getting better at reviving people, at restarting hearts, at extending life past its natural termination. And every time someone gets brought back, there's a chance they'll come back empty. Come back as one of us. We're a side effect of your success, an unintended consequence of conquering death. Evelyn sat on the edge of her bed. Her training told her this was elaborate delusion, possibly shared psychosis if she was starting to believe it. But her training also told her to evaluate evidence, and the evidence was Marcus Tillman had no records. Her receptionist had never checked him in. He was sitting in her bedroom at 3 a.m. after appearing without opening doors or windows. "What happens to you?" she asked. "To the ones like you? We fade, gradually become less real, harder to perceive. Eventually, we stop being able to interact with the living world at all. We just drift in the space between existence and non-existence, forever. That sounds like hell. It's the opposite of hell. Hell would imply punishment, suffering. This is just emptiness, which is what I had before they brought me back. Except now I remember being a person, remember what it was like to be alive, and I spend eternity missing something I can never have again. Why are you telling me this? Because you see people like me. Every therapist does. The ones who feel disconnected, who say they don't feel real, who describe themselves as going through the motions. Some of them are depressed, but some of them are like me, already dead but still moving. And you can't treat death, Dr. Park. You can only witness it." He stood up. "I won't come to any more sessions. I shouldn't have come at all. I think I was hoping you could tell me I was wrong, that I was just traumatized, just mentally ill, that I was still alive and could get better. But I'm not, and I can't. Marcus, thank you for trying to help." He walked toward her bedroom door. She watched him go. When he reached the doorway, he stopped. "One more thing. You have a patient named Alicia Somerset, 34, came in 3 weeks ago. You diagnosed her with dissociative disorder. I can't discuss other patients with you. She drowned last year, summer vacation, pulled under by a riptide. Lifeguard revived her after 7 minutes without oxygen. She doesn't feel real anymore because she isn't. She's like me. You can't fix her. You can only help her accept what she's become." He walked through the closed door. Didn't open it, just walked through it as if it wasn't there. Evelyn sat in her bedroom until dawn, questioning everything she knew about psychology, about death, about the nature of consciousness. At 8 a.m., she logged into her client management system, searched for Marcus Tillman. No records. She searched her written notes, her calendar, her billing records. Nothing. She called Jenny. "Did I have any appointments scheduled yesterday?" "You had 4 sessions. Mrs. Peterson at 9, David Liu at 11, Alicia Somerset at 2, and Mr. Brennan at 4. Not Marcus Tillman? Dr. Park, you asked me about that last night. There is no Marcus Tillman. Evelyn pulled up Alicia Somerset's file, read her intake notes. Patient reports feeling disconnected from reality following near-death experience. States she doesn't feel real and describes herself as going through the motions of being alive without actually experiencing life. Recommended twice weekly therapy for dissociative disorder. Alicia's next appointment was scheduled for that afternoon. When she arrived, Evelyn saw it immediately. The stillness, the too careful movements, the way the receptionist's eyes seemed to slide past her without quite focusing. "Alicia," Evelyn said, "come in." The woman followed her into the office, sat in the client chair, folded her hands in her lap with that familiar precision. "How are you feeling this week?" Evelyn asked. "The same, empty, like I'm not really here." "Alicia, I need to ask you something. After you drowned, after they revived you, did anything feel different? Beyond the psychological trauma, did you feel like something didn't come back with you?" The woman's gray eyes. When had Alicia's eyes been gray? In the intake photo, they'd been brown, fixed on her with sudden intensity. "You know," Alicia said. "Someone told you. A patient or someone claiming to be a patient. He told me about you, about what you are, what I am." The woman smiled. "What am I, Dr. Park?" "I don't know, but I don't think I can treat you. I don't think therapy can help." "No, but it's kind to have someone witness us, to acknowledge that we still exist, even if we shouldn't. That's something. In the emptiness, that's something." Alicia Somerset stood up, walked to the door, paused. "There will be more of us. Every day, medicine gets better at bringing people back. But bringing back the body isn't the same as bringing back the person. We're the gap between those things. We're what remains when life is extended beyond its natural end. And eventually, Dr. Park, there will be more of us than there are of you." She left. Evelyn sat in her office, staring at her case notes, at the files of clients who felt disconnected, who described themselves as not real, who said they were just going through the motions. How many of them were actually alive? How many were echoes, artifacts, bodies continuing after consciousness had already departed? She thought about Marcus Tillman, about his gray eyes, about the way he'd appeared in her bedroom without opening doors. She thought about the increasing number of clients who described existential emptiness that no treatment seemed to touch. She thought about medical advances, about revival rates, about the steadily decreasing time between death and successful resuscitation. And she wondered how long before the world was populated primarily by the almost dead, the brought back, the ones who existed in the space between life and death, forever remembering what it meant to be human while being unable to experience it. She had 17 clients scheduled that week. She looked at their files, trying to remember which ones cast shadows correctly, which ones her receptionist's eyes focused on naturally, which ones felt solid and present versus those who seemed to exist just slightly to the left of reality. She couldn't tell anymore. Maybe she'd never been able to. Maybe that was the point. Story 5. The resort looked like teeth in November. 42 cabins arranged in concentric circles around a main lodge that had been closed since Labor Day. The cabins were white against brown grass and gray sky, their windows dark, their porches empty of the summer furniture that gave them personality. Catherine Voss stood in the parking lot, keys to cabin 17 in her hand, wondering what she'd gotten herself into. She was 29 years old, recently fired from her position as assistant manager at a hotel in Portland, and desperate enough to take a winter caretaker job at a seasonal resort that paid minimum wage plus room and board. The position had been posted on a hospitality job board with a note that said, "Solitude required. 6-month commitment, November through April." The resort owner, a man named Gerald Vetch, had conducted the interview via phone. His questions had been perfunctory. Could she handle basic maintenance? Yes. Did she have experience with isolation? Yes. Any family who would miss her? The question had seemed strange, but she'd answered honestly, no. Good, Vetch had said. The last caretaker left early. Couldn't handle the quiet. Some people can't be alone with their thoughts for that long. Think you can? Yes, Catherine had said. She was less certain now, standing in the November cold, looking at the abandoned resort that would be her home for the next 6 months. The main lodge was locked. Her job was to maintain the cabins, inspect them weekly for damage from weather or wildlife, file reports with Vetch via email. Simple work, solitary work, exactly what she needed after the chaos of the hotel, the accusations that had led to her termination, the investigation that had cleared her legally but destroyed her professionally. She found cabin 17 at the outer edge of the property. It was identical to the others. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, bathroom, living room, with a fireplace. The furniture was basic but functional. Heat worked. Water ran clear. She unpacked her car, carrying boxes of clothes and books and supplies inside. By dusk, she'd established the minimal domesticity that would sustain her through winter. The resort was utterly silent. No traffic sounds, no neighbors, no human activity whatsoever, just wind through bare trees and the distant sound of the lake. Heron Lake, according to the map, lapping against the shoreline. She made dinner, pasta, ate it while reading the caretaker manual Vetch had emailed. The instructions were straightforward. Check each cabin weekly. Note any damage. Ensure pipes don't freeze. Monitor weather. Email reports every Friday. There was a final note at the end of the manual. Do not enter cabin 29. It is under long-term lease and occupied. The tenant values privacy. All maintenance for cabin 29 is handled separately. Catherine looked up from the manual. Cabin 29. She tried to picture the resort layout. Her cabin was 17. The cabins were numbered in rings starting from the lodge. Cabin 29 would be in the outermost ring, the farthest from the center. Someone else was here. The knowledge should have been comforting. She wasn't completely alone, but something about the phrasing unsettled her. The tenant values privacy, as if the person in cabin 29 was someone to be avoided rather than greeted. That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the silence, she thought about the other caretaker, the one who'd left early, couldn't handle the quiet. She wondered what had made them leave. The first week passed in establishing routine. She inspected the cabins methodically, taking notes. Most were fine. A few had small issues. A loose gutter, a cracked window, a door that wouldn't close properly. She documented everything in her Friday email to Vetch. She avoided cabin 29. The second week, she saw the smoke. It was Thursday afternoon, sky already darkening toward the early sunset of late November. She was inspecting cabin 24 when she noticed it. Thin stream of smoke rising from the direction of the outer ring, from where cabin 29 would be. Someone was there, using the fireplace, actually present. She thought about walking over, introducing herself. It would be the normal thing to do. The polite thing. But the caretaker manual's note stopped her. Do not enter. The tenant values privacy. She returned to her own cabin instead. That night, she saw lights. From her bedroom window, she could see the outer ring of cabins. Most were dark, but one had lights glowing warm in its windows. Cabin 29. She watched it for a long time, saw shadows moving inside. Someone was definitely there, living there through the winter, same as her. She tried to imagine what kind of person would lease a cabin at an abandoned resort during the off-season. Someone seeking isolation, obviously. Someone with a similar need for solitude. Maybe someone else running from something. The thought made her feel less alone. On Monday of the third week, she found the note. It was slipped under her door, white paper, folded once. The handwriting was careful, almost archaic, the kind of script taught decades ago and maintained by someone who valued precision. Catherine, welcome to the resort. I know you've been instructed not to disturb me, and I appreciate your compliance. However, I wanted to acknowledge your presence. I am in cabin 29. I've been here for some time. I will be here long after you leave. You may occasionally hear sounds from my cabin. Please disregard them. They are not your concern. I am not dangerous, but I am very private. Do not come to my cabin under any circumstances. Enjoy your winter. B. Catherine read it 3 times. The tone was polite but firm, welcoming but warning. She should have felt reassured. Instead, she felt uneasy. That night, she heard the sounds. Crying. Female. Coming from the direction of cabin 29. Not constant. It would stop, then start again. Long, wailing sobs that carried across the distance. Catherine stood at her window watching cabin 29's lights. The crying continued for hours, then stopped abruptly at 11:17 p.m. The next morning, she debated emailing Vetch. Someone is crying in cabin 29. Should I check on them? But the note had been explicit. Do not come to my cabin under any circumstances. She decided to wait. The crying happened again the next night, and the night after, always starting around 9 p.m., always stopping near midnight, always the same female voice, sobbing with a consistency that seemed less like genuine distress and more like performance, routine. On Thursday night, Catherine couldn't stand it anymore. She put on her coat, grabbed a flashlight, and walked toward cabin 29. The path through the resort felt different at night. The cabins loomed, white and silent. Her footsteps seemed too loud. The lake made sounds she hadn't noticed during the day, lapping and splashing. And what might have been water, birds, but sounded eerily human. Cabin 29 was lit from within, warm yellow light in the windows. The crying was louder here, definitely coming from inside. Catherine climbed the porch steps, raised her hand to knock. The door opened before she could. A woman stood in the doorway, elderly, perhaps 70, wearing a long dress that looked Victorian in style. Her hair was white, pulled back severely. Her face was lined but elegant, and her eyes were sharp. I asked you not to come here, she said. I heard crying. I thought someone might need help. The crying is none of your concern. Is someone hurt? Do you need help? No. Then why? Because this is what I do. What I've always done. I keep them company. They would be much louder, much more disruptive, without my presence. You should be thanking me. Catherine stared. I don't understand. The woman, P, presumably, smiled. It was not a kind smile. This resort was built on the site of a sanatorium. Did Mr. Vetch mention that? Of course not. It burned in 1947. 42 patients died. They died in their rooms, trapped, burning. The resort owner built over the ruins. 42 cabins, one for each death. They're still here, you see. The patients, still burning, still screaming. I'm the only thing keeping them quiet. You're saying the resort is haunted. Such a crude term. The resort is occupied by those who died here. They exist in a state of perpetual trauma, their final moments extended infinitely. I provide mitigation. My presence soothes them, gives them someone to appeal to. Without me, they would make the entire resort uninhabitable. Catherine took a step back. You're insane. Perhaps. But you've heard them, haven't you? The crying. That's just one. Just the woman in this particular cabin. There are 41 others, all reliving their deaths. Every night. Forever. I move between cabins, spending time with each one, giving them attention, allowing them to express their anguish in controlled ways. It's exhausting work, but someone must do it. I'm calling the police. To report what? An old woman living in a cabin she's legally leased? They know about me, dear. Mr. Vetch has explained the situation. I'm part of the property. Part of the arrangement. Every caretaker is told to avoid me. Most manage to follow that simple instruction. Catherine ran. She sprinted back to cabin 17, locked herself inside, pulled out her phone, called Vetch. It rang 7 times before he answered. Catherine, it's late. Is something wrong? There's a woman in cabin 29. She's talking nonsense about dead patients and... Did you go to cabin 29? Yes, I heard crying and I told you not to go there. The manual was very clear. She's talking about ghosts, about keeping them quiet, about... Catherine. His voice was firm. Patricia has been a long-term resident of the resort for many years. She has certain eccentricities, but she causes no problems as long as she's left alone. You were instructed to avoid her cabin. That instruction exists for your safety and comfort. She said the resort is built on a sanatorium. That's true. It burned down in the 40s. It's unfortunate history, but not relevant to your work. She said patients died here, that they're still here. Patricia believes that. Her beliefs are not your concern. Do your job. Leave her alone. Can you do that? Catherine wanted to say no, wanted to quit. But she thought about her empty bank account, about the job market, about returning to Portland with nowhere to go. Yes, she said. Good. I'll increase your pay by $2 an hour. Compensation for the distress. But you must leave Patricia alone. Understood? Understood. She hung up. That night, she heard the crying again. And underneath it, or maybe from other directions, other sounds. Screaming, banging, voices calling for help. So faint she almost missed them. Almost convinced herself they were wind or wildlife or imagination. But they were there, all around the resort, in all 42 cabins, the sounds of people dying, over and over, forever. She put in earplugs, turned on music, tried to sleep. The next morning, exhausted, she checked her email, a message from Vetch. Patricia called me. She's concerned about you. She thinks the sounds might be too much for you to handle. She's offering to help. If you agree to assist her with her work, spending time in the cabins, providing company to the occupants, she believes it will make your winter more tolerable. The choice is yours. Catherine read it twice. Assist her with her work, providing company to the occupants, sitting with the dead, the burning, the eternally dying, every night for 6 months. She thought about leaving, getting in her car, driving away. But Vetch had increased her pay. She'd committed to 6 months. And more than that, she was curious, morbidly, compulsively curious about what Patricia did in those cabins, about what the occupants wanted, about what it meant to keep company with the endlessly traumatized dead. She emailed back, "I'll help." Patricia came to her cabin that evening, brought tea, sat at Catherine's small kitchen table like a visiting aunt. "You'll need training," she said. "The work is delicate. Each occupant has different needs, different wounds. They're reliving their final moments continuously. Your job is to provide witness, to acknowledge their suffering, to offer comfort that can never truly comfort because their suffering never ends." Why do they need witnesses? Because suffering without witness is unbearable. Even eternal suffering can be borne if someone sees it. Someone acknowledges it. Someone says, "I see you. I know you're in pain. You are not alone." That's horrible. Yes, but it's better than the alternative. Before I came here, they were screaming. All of them. All the time. The resort was uninhabitable. Vetch couldn't keep caretakers for more than a week. Then I arrived. I understood what they needed. I provided it. The screaming stopped. The resort became tolerable again. "How long have you been here?" Patricia smiled. "A very long time." They walked to cabin 1. Patricia opened the door without knocking. Inside was fire. Not real fire. Not exactly. But the impression of fire. The room was burning in some dimension adjacent to ordinary perception. Catherine could see it when she looked indirectly, when she let her focus soften. Flames climbing walls, smoke filling the air, and in the center, a man, young, 19, maybe 20, burning. He was screaming. Patricia walked into the fire as if it wasn't there, sat down on a chair that was simultaneously present and burning, reached out and took the burning man's hand. "Thomas," she said gently, "I'm here. I see you. I know it hurts." The screaming diminished, became crying. "It hurts," the burning man sobbed. "Please make it stop." "I can't make it stop, but I can sit with you. I can tell you that you're not alone, that someone witnesses your pain." "How long?" "As long as you need me." Catherine stood in the doorway watching. The fire wasn't touching Patricia. The smoke wasn't affecting her. She sat calmly, holding the hand of a man who'd been burning for 75 years, offering the only comfort possible. Presence. After an hour, Patricia stood. "I'll be back tomorrow, Thomas. Hold on until then." "I'll try." They left. Behind them, the screaming resumed. Softer than before. Controlled. "Each one needs attention," Patricia explained as they walked to the next cabin. "Regular visits. Someone to witness their suffering. Without that, they lose themselves completely. Become pure pain. Pure trauma. That's when they get loud. When they become dangerous." Dangerous? Their suffering is contagious. If you listen too long without protection, without training, it begins to infect you. You start feeling what they feel. Burning when they burn. Drowning when they drown. Suffocating when they suffocate. That's what happened to the previous caretaker. Listened too long. Started experiencing their deaths herself. Had to be institutionalized. "And you want me to help with this?" "Not immediately. First you'll observe, learn, build tolerance. Eventually, when you're ready, you'll take over some cabins. Give me breaks. I've been doing this alone for so long. I'm tired, Catherine. So very tired." They visited 12 cabins that night. Each contained someone dying, burning, drowning in smoke, crushed by falling beams, trapped behind locked doors, all of them reliving final moments that had never truly ended. And in each cabin, Patricia sat, held hands, offered witness, provided the minimal comfort of acknowledgement. By dawn, Catherine was exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. She felt hollowed out, contaminated by proximity to so much suffering. "You did well," Patricia said. "Better than most. You'll be ready for solo visit soon." "I don't want to be ready." "But you will be, because the alternative is leaving. And where would you go? Back to Portland? Back to the hotel that fired you? Back to whatever you were running from?" Catherine didn't answer. She knew Patricia was right. The winter stretched ahead. 6 months, 180 days, spending each night moving between cabins, sitting with the dead, witnessing eternal suffering, becoming gradually contaminated by trauma that never healed. "Why do you do this?" Catherine asked. Patricia looked at her. In the pre-dawn light, her face looked ancient, timeless. "Because I was here when it burned," she said. "I was a nurse in the sanatorium. I survived. 42 of my patients didn't. And I've spent every night since trying to make amends, trying to comfort them, trying to reduce their suffering, even though I can't end it." "You've been here since 1947? "I've been here since 1947. "That's impossible." "Yes, but so is a building full of people burning forever. So are the dead requiring witnesses. So are the many impossible things you've seen tonight. Impossibility doesn't make things less real." They reached Catherine's cabin. Patricia paused at the door. "Rest today. Tonight we continue. Eventually, you'll take some cabins permanently, develop relationships with specific occupants. They'll come to rely on you, to need you, and you'll be bound here, same as I am, bound by responsibility, by witness, by the inability to abandon people in eternal suffering. What if I refuse? Then they'll get louder. The resort will become uninhabitable again. Vetch will lose his business. But more importantly, you'll know you abandoned people in pain, people who need you, and that knowledge will follow you wherever you go. Trust me, I know. I've tried to leave many times. The guilt always brings me back." Patricia left. Catherine stood at her window, watching the sun rise over the resort, watching smoke that wasn't quite smoke rising from 42 cabins, hearing screams that were almost too faint to perceive. She thought about leaving, about getting in her car and driving away, but she thought about Thomas, about his burning hand in Patricia's cold grip, about his desperate plea for someone to witness his suffering. She thought about the other 41, about how they'd sound without regular visits, without someone to acknowledge their pain. She thought about the previous caretaker, institutionalized, contaminated by exposure, and she knew she was already contaminated, already bound, already responsible. The resort had claimed her, same as Patricia, same as every caretaker who'd ever stayed long enough to understand what this place really was. She would spend her winter bearing witness. She would sit with the eternally dying. She would provide the minimal comfort of presence. And when spring came, when her 6 months ended, she wouldn't leave, because someone had to stay. Someone had to witness. Someone had to provide company to the suffering dead. And Catherine Voss, who'd come here running from accusations and failure, who'd thought she wanted solitude, had discovered a purpose more binding than any job, any obligation, any commitment she'd ever made. She would become what Patricia was, a witness, a companion, a keeper of the eternally dying. The resort would be her home, forever, until she too became smoke and suffering and endless trauma, requiring witness from the next desperate soul who answered an ad for winter caretaker. She made coffee, opened her laptop, began typing her Friday report to Vetch. All cabins inspected, minor maintenance issues documented. Everything is fine. I'll be staying through spring, possibly longer. The work here is important. Someone has to do it. P needs help. I'm ready to provide it. She hit send. Outside, the resort settled into its daytime quiet. The screaming reduced to whispers, the burning invisible in sunlight. But Catherine knew, tonight it would resume. Tonight she would walk between cabins, sit with the dead, hold burning hands, witness drowning and crushing and suffocation. And gradually, over weeks and months, she would become what this place needed her to become. Another keeper, another witness, another soul bound forever to the suffering dead. Thank you for spending these hours with me in the stillness. If tonight's stories found you in the dark spaces between sleep and waking, if they reminded you that mystery still exists in the corners of our too bright world, then they've done their work. Consider subscribing if you'd like to return to these shadows with me. We're here every week, waiting. Sleep well or don't. Sometimes the most interesting thoughts come when we lie awake wondering. This has been the Stillness Broadcast. Until the next time we gather in the dark, remember, some doors, once opened, change everything that comes after.